am. Hey, what's up? It's Professor Sansom, DGM, whatever it is. I always forget the number of this class, and that's okay. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that we are talking audio concepts in the audio industry. And with us today, we have a friend of mine, also from here in Utah, and his name is Kim, but it goes by KC Supreme. So, Casey, uh, you have got some pretty fun stuff behind you in the background. Um, this the intent of this call is so that the students can learn about what you are doing for your job, how you got into your job, all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm just going to ask a basic list of questions that will interleave without them being like, where were you on March 31st, 2023? I know what you were doing, right? So why don't we just jump right into it? And you are coming into this call as a producer. You are not an engineer, and so we're going to just kick that out right away. He's not an engineer, he's a producer. Will you tell us what your job is, what you primarily do, and how your day-to-day ends up looking?
Yeah, so to sum it up, I make beats for artists and produce records. It's not always just making beats. Sometimes it's being in the studio with the artist and helping them create the final song and giving them ideas, or sometimes helping them come up with concepts for the lyrics or writing some lyrics. It just varies. Most of the time, I'm there with the artist playing some beats or making a beat on the spot for them. And then that way they can give some input to what they kind of want. So I can shape it to what they want. And then from there, they go on to writing and recording. And it just depends on each artist. Some artists, they want help. Some artists, they just are like, hey, leave the room. I'll let you know when the song's done. So it just varies from artist to artist. But yeah, I produce music.
So when you're not down in LA at a recording studio and you're at your setup that you're at right now, are you primarily creating beats? Or are you primarily doing a lot of communication back and forth? What's your production process look like?
So yeah, I make a lot of beats. I have to have a lot prepared because there's opportunities that come all the time. I'm signed to Universal Publishing Group. And so and I'm also a part of Internet Money. So through those two avenues, there's a lot of opportunities I can get. They'll say, this artist they want beats, or it'll be this artist has a song that they like, but they want the production to be fixed or changed up. And so sometimes I'll be working around an existing song or an acapella and building a beat around it. But I would say like 80% of the time I'm coming up with new beats so that I have a bunch ready, like ammunition, so that when there's an opportunity, I have stuff ready, because opportunities come really fast and they go really fast. So it's like, this artist is in the studio tonight. We need beats right now. And so, a lot of my job is just stockpiling those and getting them ready. And then other times I have time to prepare for opportunities. So it's like, this artist needs beats, send all this week. And so I have time and I can be like, all right, I'm making stuff for this artist. I can sit down and make as many as I can and make sure they're really, targeted and accurate for the artist. So
Yeah. What do you love the most about what you do? Like what is just that keeps you going day to day?
I mean, my job particularly has a lot of ups and downs, a lot of pressure. But the thing I love about it is it's just like, I think anyone in this class is looking to achieve this, just like making a living off of music. Doesn't matter if you're an engineer, doesn't matter if you're a producer, doesn't matter if you're a songwriter, artist. Making a living and like having that be your job is just like the dream. So I just love the fact that I'm able to support myself off of music, and that, that's just the best part. And I hope everybody can achieve that in some form or another. There's lots of different avenues you could take, obviously. So that's my favorite part.
Favorite. So let's do the flip side of that coin. What's the hardest part, or the part that you like the least about what you're doing?
um the hardest part, like I said, is the pressure, because there's a lot of situations where you're in the studio with an artist who is it has a lot of expectations on you, and in a sense you kind of have to perform. Like, there's a room full of guys or there's an artist, especially in like the rap world. I do a lot of stuff in the rap world. So you have some artists that are a little more intimidating and you're in a room with all their friends and they're just like, all right, do your thing, and you have to get up there and like play your stuff. And as anyone who makes music knows, like making music is a very vulnerable thing. Like having to play something that you made in front of a room full of people is always difficult because you're in your own head. You're thinking like, this beat sucks or something like that, or you're just worried about what people think in general. So I think that's the hardest part, is just like having to be vulnerable and play stuff that you made for a room full of people and hoping they like it. And it's just a vulnerable thing. So
So when you're in there, you're the performer for the performers, essentially. That puts you in a completely different spotlight than what people would expect. Um,
yeah.
what what are some things that you do to help calm your nerves? What are some things you do to win in that moment?
Um, I think it just comes with repetition, like and like getting confirmation. So like the first few times I was in the studio with the artist, it's super nerve-wracking and you're just unsure of yourself. But I feel like over time, getting reactions, like you play a beat and an artist is like freaking out, like, this is crazy. Oh my God, I love this. Or, that happening time after time kind of builds some confidence. So, like, okay, I know I'm good at this. So I know my stuff is good. And then from there, you just kind of realize like not every person is going to like what you make, and you're never going to make it so every single person or every single artist likes what you make. So you just kind of gotta come to grips with that. Like, I know I'm good at this. I have confirmation that I'm good at this. Now I'm just gonna do my thing, and they either like it or don't. So you just kind of accept that, like, there's gonna be situations where the artist doesn't like what you play, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just like personal taste. So accepting that helps a lot. But other than that, I mean, I feel like it's just always nerve wracking. It's just a matter of being prepared, having stuff that you're confident in. Like for me, like having beats prepared for the artists that are like super accurate and I'm confident in them. So I know that when I play them, I'll feel confident about it. So being prepared is like half the battle. You don't just want to go into a session with nothing prepared and just wing it. That's the worst feeling. And just sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but being prepared helps a lot.
Yeah, so you got this preparedness that comes, you've probably doing some homework on the artist, you're already listening to that kind of music, you've made a whole stockpile of beats. Let's talk about this though. How does a kid that graduated from Murray High School get to having a placard behind him with platinum records and having more than 10 platinum records under your belt? How did you, like, what was your path for getting out of high school and getting into this industry?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long path and it was a risky career. Like I remember when I was in high school, I just kind of started dabbling in making music. I found out about FL Studio, which is what I use as a DAW. I have used like Logic before. I mess around in Ableton sometimes, but back then I found FL Studio because there were some people online that I found that um, they were online producers. So basically, their whole game was selling beats online, not to famous artists, not to local artists, just like the average rapper online who like wants to buy beats and they go type in Drake type beat or whatever. That was kind of the initial exposure I had to of people doing that. So I thought it was cool and I started dabbling in it. And then I just immersed myself into that online world where like you're making beats just to sell online. And there's stores like BeatStars, if you guys have ever heard of that. And the one that I used to use back then was SoundClick. And you basically make a bunch of beats, put them online, and then unknown rappers from around the world or whatever would buy them. So that's where I got started. And I just put myself out there and I started to get some traction. I started to make a little bit of money from it every single month. And I kind of built my name up on YouTube, is kind of like the modern day version of all that. You put your beats on YouTube and people buy them. And then there was other online producers. One of them was Taz Taylor. He started Internet Money. He was an online producer at the time, just doing the same thing I was doing. And so through that, he kind of noticed me and we met. And he was like a really popular online producer. Like he was making like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just selling beats online on YouTube and stuff. So I followed him naturally. He was like someone that I looked up to, and he was doing a seminar where he was speaking in LA. And I'd never been to LA. You know, I'm from Murray, and I took the chance and flew out there to go see him speak. And a couple days before, I had told him that I was coming to see him speak because we had talked a little bit online. He knew about me, and he hit me up about 2 days before the seminar and said, "Hey, I'm staying at an Airbnb, and someone that was going with me dropped out. They're not coming anymore. We need someone to fill in this Airbnb spot. Do you want to do it? I don't really know you. I know it's weird, but like, would you be willing to do it?" So I took the chance, and sorry, my dogs are gonna start barking. I took the chance and we met, and I went to the seminar. Instead of just being like someone in the crowd, I ended up being like behind the scenes and helping with the seminar, and we just became friends. And so I met him, Taz Taylor, and then right around then he was starting this Internet Money Collective, which is just a group of producers. And at the time we were just online producers, just selling beats online. And it just kind of spiraled from there. So it was just like meeting someone at the right time, and taking the chance of like flying out to LA with a bunch of people I don't know. And that's kind of where my career started right there.
Yeah, it's you took a risk and you got some reward from taking a
Yeah.
risk. That's
It was
awesome.
scary. I'm not gonna lie. It was like, I don't know these people. I never been to LA. I was afraid of flying at the time. So like it was so easy for me to just be like, no, I'm not gonna go. But I'm
Right.
glad I did. It changed my life. So
Nice. Awesome. With this internet collective, with internet money, and with Taz, these are obviously people that you're working with, but and you said that you had a little bit of like you were following him because of what he was doing, but who are some of the other creative influences that have kind of been guides in your path to where you're at now?
I mean, obviously like a lot of big mainstream producers like I gotta think. Now I'm drawing a blank. Well, like some rap ones are like Metro Boomin and like uh obviously back in the day like Dr. Dre and those that line of really famous producers kind of influenced me. But since then, just really I have a bunch of peers now in the music industry, and they're all out there making big records, and they just I feel like we inspire each other, just like kind of like a competition kind of thing where it's like, oh, you see this guy got this song come out, and it's like, okay, I need to go harder. So I feel like there's not a lot of people that I like look up to. It's more like my peers and more like a competitive sense of like keeping each other going. I guess that's the best answer.
How do you make it so that when you're creating day in and day out, how do you keep things fresh? How do you avoid hitting the walls or the creative blocks? What do you do that helps you keep your mind focused and creative?
Yeah, I mean this industry is just so up and down, and this career is so up and down. Like there's moments where you're on top of the world and you just got the biggest song that came out or whatever. And there's moments where it's been like 6 months. It's like I haven't got any songs. It's like there's this it's just like in a roller, it's like a roller coaster, like ups and downs that you go through. And so I feel like I've learned that you just have to keep going, even in those times where you're in a downswing, and you just have to keep creating, keep making stuff. And you have to also keep up with the times because music is changing every month. It seems like nowadays, like there's new trends, there's new things. So I feel like for me, it's important just to stay up and listen to what's popular in my genres that I create. I create like rap, pop, R&B, all these different genres. And I feel like it's just important for me to like keep up on the new releases, and you have to be a listener of music. You can't just get stuck in this tunnel where you're only listening to what you're making. Sometimes you have to go out there and just listen to a bunch of music and get inspired. And for a long time, I stopped listening to music because I was making music so often, and I was just listening to the music that I was making with artists, that I kind of for a long time stopped listening to the outside world of music. And then once I started like finding new songs that inspired me and that I liked, and like listening to music again as a listener, I found that that brought me a lot of inspiration and helped me create better stuff that's more current, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally makes sense.
It's important. Listen to music when you're driving around your car. Find songs you love, listen to new music, and just like that's the best way to get inspired.
Yeah, it's easy in this world for the students to get into, we're in school studying, and they start locking into techniques, and then they start doing critical listening, and they stop enjoying. And what
Yeah.
you described is, even in your path as a producer, you got to find that place where you can enjoy what you're doing again. You got to enjoy the art that you're able to create. So yeah, that's super cool. What are some of the coolest like gigs or clients that you've been able to have, or people that you've been able to work with?
Man, there's a long list. There's a lot of people, but off the top of my head, for everyone here in Utah, like Post Malone lives here in Utah. I've worked with him numerous times. He's a great guy. I've had some really cool experiences. I was in the studio with him the night that they made Sunflower with Swaley and Post Malone. It was in LA. I wasn't on the song, but I just happened to be there, like hanging out with him. And Swaley came to the studio and played him like the demo version, and then Post Malone just went in and like recorded the song right then and there. So that was pretty cool. Uh, I've worked with tons and tons of artists, like too many to list, but I do have like a Genius page. If you guys have heard of genius.com, I have a Genius page that lists like every single artist that I've worked with, and or my Instagram, you can see a lot of stuff on there. So I have like credits you can go check out, but like, I don't know, tons of people, pop artists, rap artists, R&B artists.
What's
Yeah.
your biggest song that you've done? I mean, you got a bunch on the wall behind you, but what's your biggest one?
The biggest one is the one that has over 1 billion on Spotify. It's by Trevor Daniel, Falling. And he was just an artist that we signed at Internet Money. And I was working with him a ton because we were trying to develop him. And one of the songs we did together just blew up, like totally unexpected. He's not like a huge artist usually. He had his run and he got that song that just went super viral on the radio. It was number one, the number one pop song on the top 40 on the radio and stuff. So it just went crazy. And that song definitely changed my life big time. So even though
So
it's not a huge artist everyone knows, that song is my biggest song for
it's
sure.
okay. It doesn't have to be somebody that everybody knows to blow up, and that's what's cool about the industry today. Um,
Yeah.
from your perspective, you go into the studio as a producer. Will you talk about your relationship with the engineers that you work with and how you have to relate to them?
Yes. I feel like engineers are probably the most critical part of music. And they're so like, I feel like they're so underrated in general. And they're the most important part. They're like the glue to everything because, for example, our engineer, we have an Internet Money, we have an in-house engineer. His name is Era. And like he does everything. Like he helps the artist put together the song. He almost is like a producer in a sense because he's telling the artist, "Oh, say it like this, say it like that." So, an engineer that's super involved is just so critical. And like without engineers, I feel like I've seen so many artists treat engineers like dirt and it sucks because like without them, you wouldn't even have the song sounding like how the song sounded. They're like one of the most critical pieces. So I have a lot of respect for engineers. There was a brief period where I was an engineer, but I didn't go very far with it. But I have a lot of respect for the process of it. It's a hard job, and I feel like they're definitely underrated. They deserve more credit. They deserve more percentages of songs. They deserve everything more. So tons of respect for engineers.
In your studio out there, do you know what kind of console and kind of equipment you're running most of the time, or do you just
Oh, in LA.
yeah?
So the one we have now is just all in the box, pretty much a Pro Tools. We don't have like a console. I feel like most studios I've been to as a producer, I mean, I'm not an engineer per se. I used to dabble in it, but a lot of the consoles are just kind of desks that are being used in these old studios because everyone's running everything out of the box or in the box in Pro Tools. So uh yeah, we don't have any like fancy consoles. We have a lot of synths and stuff because we're more of a production
Right.
focused studio. But yeah.
So when you create something in FL Studio and you need to take it into Pro Tools for the engineer, are you
Mhm.
giving them stems, or are you giving them uh just a stereo bounce? How is your workflow with them that way?
So usually when an artist is in the studio and I'm playing them beats, they'll just want the bounce at that time and they'll record the artist over the bounce. And then later, if the song's gonna come out, then usually the engineer or the label or whoever will hit me up and say, hey, we need the stems. And then at that point, they'll go back, and when they're mixing the song, getting it ready for release, they'll take the stems and remix everything. So in a sense, I have to have my beats like not mastered, but I have to have them mixed well and loud, because that's the impression that the artist is going to get in the studio. So I pretty much mix and master my own beats beforehand. So they're just ready to go for the artist. And that's a skill in itself and a technique I had to learn over time. That's very important. Like, because I've seen a lot of producers that just don't care about mixing their beats. They don't care about making them loud and relatively loud. And then it just doesn't go well for them. So that's a very important part of the process, is just knowing how to mix your stuff so it's ready for the artist to just lay their vocals on for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that I mean, it's something that I was just questioning, like how much of it are you having to export all of it, and but I mean, you've given us the answer. I just always curious when somebody comes in with a track that they bought and they're like, hey, I want to record over this, and sometimes I'm like, great, it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm trying
Yeah.
to track down the multi-track, and they're like, what do you mean? So
Yeah. Well, when I export a beat, every time I finish a beat, I always export the stems right then, because I've been in situations where later, an artist will use it and they'll want to release it and they'll hit me up for the stems. And I like go to open the project and it's corrupted or I lost it or something. And then I don't have the stems. So I always export the stems right when I make the beat. That way I just have them ready. And it's funny about like loudness and mastering, because in the studio setting, it's kind of competitive. Like sometimes when I'll go to a studio session, there'll be other producers there, and the artist will be like, "Okay, you play your stuff," and then they'll be like, "All right, you play your stuff." And so the loudness factor kind of comes in, because you want your beats to like hit harder. You want the artist to be like, "Oh, this is good. This hits hard. It's loud." So there's kind of that competitive, where if your beats, the competitiveness, where if your beats aren't loud enough, the next dude playing his beats are going to sound better because they're louder. There's that phenomenon where louder sounds better. So, uh, but yeah, mixing my beats is super important for that reason. Just so when the artist hears it in the studio, they want to use it. And then when they're recording to it, they continue to finish the song because it sounds good to them in the moment. So,
right. That makes perfect sense to me. Um, as you've learned and as you said in your in your last comment, you've had things go wrong. You've had some corrupt files, you've had things. What are some hard knocks that you've had that have happened that have taught you lessons that maybe you could share with my students so that they can try to avoid some of those pitfalls?
yeah, I feel like I'm just going to say organization is key of your files. Like always make sure your files are organized, make sure you have backups, make sure you save everything properly. Like I said, I export the stems because I've been in those situations. I can't think of like any in particular, but I've been in those situations where I've lost songs because I didn't have the stems, or I've been in the studio and an artist wants me to play something and I don't have all my files with me and I don't have the stuff I need to play. And so just to save yourself embarrassment or loss of an opportunity, because opportunities come and go so fast. Like you might have an opportunity where it's like you have 30 minutes to do this. And if you don't have your stuff together, you miss out on that. So I've been in that situation many times. I use Dropbox personally for my stuff so that when I'm on the go, I have all my beats on Dropbox ready to go from any studio, any computer. I can log in and pull it up. On my computer itself, I have everything super organized by like my project files, like by month, by year, by any way you can organize it. It's just part of preparation once again, but having your files organized, backed up on something like Dropbox or whatever, that's just the key, so that when you're in that situation where you might have an opportunity come up, like as an engineer, if you guys are trying to be engineers and artists in the future, if you're, in the bigger scheme of things, you're in the actual music industry, you're out in LA, whatever, wherever you're at, an artist might call an engineer and be like, hey, I need you in my house in 30 minutes, or I need you at the studio in 30 minutes. And if you're not ready, you don't have your stuff, your hard drive, whatever you take with you. Because a lot of engineers have their like external hard drive that they show up to the studio with so they can use all their plugins and Pro Tools works. They don't have to rely on the studio's setup. But having that ready to go is key in those moments, because if you don't make it in time, the artist is going to be like, all right, call the other engineer or whatever. You might lose out on that opportunity. I've seen that happen too. So organization is key.
You're preaching. I love it because we try to hammer some of those concepts home to students too. Organization, because you never know what's going to
Save your
happen.
project.
Yeah, save. Command S is your best friend.
Yep.
Let's take a detour really quick in this. And how does your creative process start when you start thinking about a beat? How do you usually approach it? Do you have an approach that you go to more often than not?
It varies. I feel like I make the best stuff when I'm not trying to have a certain approach, or I'm not putting it in a box necessarily. I'm just making whatever comes out. And that's the most fun. And when I tend to make the best stuff. And then there's times where it's like I have to make stuff for this particular artist, and I'm just like trying to hyper focus on making stuff for them. And then it's just a matter of like listening to their songs in a casual manner. I feel like it's best to like drive around and just listen to their music casually, or while you're out and about cleaning your house, whatever, rather than just like sit down at your desk and like play their music. And like, you kind of have to like put yourself in the position of a fan of their music and listen to it as an enjoyer of music to be able to make something that is good for them. And you also have to think about, like, artists aren't making what they've already made, so you have to keep yourself out of that mindset of like, this is what their last album sound like, I'm going to make stuff like that. You have to kind of go, what would their next album sound like, and how can I kind of take their style and come up with something new out of that without it being totally left field and not fitting the artist at all. So that those are just some of the things I think about when I sit down to make stuff for a specific artist. But other than that, I just go off like the vibe, like what feels good or what sounds good at the time, without trying to put any kind of preconceived notion on it. So
Have you ever sat down and thought about the artist's voice as you're creating the song and you're like, you know, I know their rhythm and their tempo, so something that would be really like, and then just kind of start building off of that. Is that ever an approach?
yeah, so there's a few different things I'll do. One thing I like to do is to study common BPMs and keys that an artist uses. So if you go through an artist catalog, you'll notice that they tend to stick to a certain key range. Not always, there's always exceptions. And the reason I found is because when they use a beat that's in that key or BPM, they sound naturally good over it, because maybe that's just where their voice sounds best. So they tend to gravitate towards those. I just that data from it. I like to collect that data and kind of go, okay, I'm gonna make something in this key and this BPM because that's something that the artist tends to stick to. So that sometimes I'll use that approach. Another thing I like to do is take a acapella from an artist from an existing song. So say I'm making a song for an artist, I'll go through and get one of their acapellas, which nowadays AI is able to strip the acapella from songs. Um, and I'll just build a beat around their acapella. So I know it fits their voice, I know it fits their cadence, everything. And then I just take the acapella out, and then I have a beat for them that's like custom fit to them. And once again, you kind of have to be careful not to accidentally remake the song too similar to what they already made or something. But I like to do stuff like that, just as kind of like creative exercises, or ways to make stuff that's super targeted for an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you, on an average trip down to Los Angeles, how much ammunition do you have in your storehouse for like back or beats that you can just pull out at any moment?
So I feel like I make beats pretty much every day. So if I'm there for a week, the other 3 weeks out of the month, I've just been making stuff. So I have last month's stuff, and the month before that, I feel like I make tons and tons of beats, and then like 5% actually get used by an artist. So I feel like I have a year or two's worth of this back catalog stuff. And then beats kind of expire. Like, I don't know why, but like last year's beats, I don't really go to anymore, just because they sound not dated, but I feel like I'm constantly improving as a creative. Like this year's stuff is always better than last year's stuff in my eyes. That stuff sounds stale to me. I don't want to use it anymore. So, but there's like a relative window of like stuff that I have. So I have tons. I have like an excess of beats. That's not a problem. It's more so just like having stuff that's targeted to the artist. And I don't always know what artist I'm going to be working with when I go down there. Sometimes I do. Sometimes it's like I'm going down there to work with someone. And in that case, before I go on the trip, I'll stockpile as many as I can, like 50, 100, whatever, you know. But other than that, it's kind of just like having my whole collection with me, like I said, on Dropbox. And then it might be 30 minutes before the session. I go back through them and go, which ones will work? Just so I have some backup. Because sometimes artists want you to make something on the spot and you're expecting that. And then when you go in, they go, play some stuff you already have. And you're like, uh, what do I do? You know? So I always have like a backup folder ready so that if that happens, I have some stuff that I went through and picked for that artist. So a lot of it is like right before the session preparation, honestly, last minute, not last minute, but like that's just the best way to make it super targeted is just to know like I have this session in 30 minutes. Let me go through my stuff and just handpick some stuff right now. So that's how I like to do it.
How do you create a work-life balance that keeps your family happy, that knowing that you have to travel? How do you keep it so that you're not in constant contention with the members of your household?
Yeah, and that's a unique thing for me because I feel like a lot of people in my career are younger and don't have families yet and don't have any obligations and they just can move to LA and sleep on a couch. Me, you know, when I started this journey, I already had my first child. And so I was already in a different situation than most people. And so because of that, I have to find, like you said, work life balance. And that's one of the reasons I did not move to LA. I was going to move to LA and it just wasn't a good fit for my family. And that was a hard choice because like my career is important and all these things are happening and like people are like you should move to LA and take advantage of it, and then like on the other hand my family is important to me. So ultimately I found the balance by not living in LA, by only traveling to LA, and then that way when I'm here I can work like a normal 9 to 5 job. That's how I treat it, just because I like to have work life balance and spend time with my family. I like to treat it like a 9 to 5. Basically when I'm home I make stuff all day and then at 5 o'clock I kind of go, you know, I'm done for the day, I'm gonna go chill with my family. And it doesn't always work like that. You know, some nights I have to work late, some nights I have to stay up all night and make stuff for a certain thing, but I try to keep that balance. It's important to me. And then when I go to LA, I'm there without my family and I have like a whole week or however many days I'm there to just be there and just like, you know, stay to the studio till 4 a.m. and then sleep in till noon the next day. Or, you know, that's basically the life and the schedule of a producer. So, and then when I'm home, I can shift to my 9 to 5 balance. And that's just how I do it. And I like it. I'm happy with my balance. So,
Yeah, we have students who are in that same situation that are, have families started, and they're not in the, typical range of, oh, I'm just a college student, can go out and fly and do whatever I want. So that, I know it's an important question for them to hear, that like, oh, I can create, and I can create a nice balance between my work, and that my work is not my entire life. Because I think a lot of us, you can get pulled in that vacuum where it's just, oh, I live in the studio and what's the sunshine?
yeah. And I've found on that topic that like being in the studio 24/7 and never going out and doing life things has led to like less creativity. I've found that like going out and doing things in life that are non-music related, non-studio related will actually bring more creativity and inspiration when you are working. Um, as a producer, I know a lot of 18-year-old producers or whatever that are just like always in the studio and they're never doing anything else and they have no life. And it's like they have creative block or whatever. It's like go out and do something on a Friday night with your friends or whatever, and then maybe you'll have some inspiration. And also, engineers are the ones that have to stay at the studio the longest. So if you're an engineer, you have to find that balance. If you have a family too, your family's gonna have to know some nights you're gonna be up all night in the studio, because when you're in the career and you're in the thick of things, that's how it goes. and you just got to find that balance. It's tough. It's always tough, but if what's important to you, you'll make time for, and if your family is important, you will strive to find that balance any way you can. So
Awesome. In the, you know, it looking forward in your life and your career, where do you see yourself in like 5, 10 years?
that's hard to say. I know that like producing in particular, the way it's going now won't last forever. As you get older, I feel like you kind of shift to maybe more label or management side of things. Um, that's where I could see myself going, kind of shifting from being an actual producer to just someone who oversees producers, assigns producers, or maybe fitting in some kind of label situation. But I think I'll always be producing, for fun or as a career. But I could see that shifting in my later years to more of a taking a step back and just managing or signing people.
Cool. What's some advice that you could give to the students before we turn the time over to them to ask some questions, that they could take and use some, some nuggets of wisdom that they can plant in their minds?
I would say, I mean, I'm assuming most of you guys are younger. Go for it, man. Like, if this is what you want to do, if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a producer, if you want to do music in any sense, take the risk. It's going to be scary, it's going to be risky. I remember when I was starting, my parents would be like, "Are you sure you want to do music? You sure you don't want to do this?" And I took the chance and it paid off for me. And while you're young and while you don't have a bunch of uh things that you have to worry about in life, like families, kids, blah, 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 take the chance and just try it. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen is it doesn't work out. But I feel like if you are determined and you actually try and you never give up, it will work out for you. It doesn't matter if it's when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50. Eventually, I truly believe it will work out for you. You just have to not give up, because in music and creative fields, there's times where you're just like, man, like like I get imposter syndrome personally. Like, even though I have like accolades and I have whatever, I go through periods where I'm like, man, I suck. And I feel like you have to push through those times. And that's the hardest part, is just like not giving up when maybe you're a couple years into it and nothing's happened for you yet, and you haven't got a break or you haven't got anything going for you. That's when like most people give up. And if you don't give up and you just keep pushing past that point, eventually I believe it will work out. So if music is your passion and it's what you want to do, just go for it and don't give up and push through the times where you doubt yourself and just keep going. That's all I can say, is just keep going. So,
Gotcha. Great advice. Because, you know, there's times I know in my career path that I felt like, well, it's time to stop because it's not going, and then take a couple more steps forward, and all of a sudden you're in a place where you're finding success again, or you've gotten, a new gig that's opened up, or you've made a connection that opens up your world one more time, and all of a sudden it's not this doom and gloom anymore. I'm gonna
yeah.
open up the gallery view here. Got a bunch of people on. You guys have questions that you could ask to Casey here? We can turn it over to you guys. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll call you out. Is John looking to raise his hand? Yep, I knew it. We could see your finger going to the on the mouse. Go ahead, John.
All right. Hi, Casey. Thanks for talking with us. Um, so where do you find the balance between beats that, you know, aren't too repetitive, but also don't go off the deep end in terms of, being too varied and not making any sense? Like, how do you keep it coherent and interesting?
So First of all, I feel like over time you kind of develop a sense for it. And there is kind of, I won't say formula, but there's kind of like as far as like arranging the beats, because I'm assuming you're talking about like mostly arrangement, like how the beat is structured and like using sounds that keep it interesting. I feel like you kind of gain that over time. And anyone who makes beats, the first few years, you're probably gonna suck. That's just the that's just the reality of it. I sucked. And you just keep pushing through that point and you kind of learn. Another way to answer that is collaborating with people that you're fans of or you think are good in your lane can help you come up with new ideas and stay current and stuff like that. The other thing I was gonna say is, let's see, I'm drawing a blank now. What I was gonna say. Um, Keep it varied. Yeah, I mean, staying up on current music and music you like and studying. That's what I was gonna say. So like studying music is very important. So like if you like a certain type of genre and you want to make beats in that genre, study the music in that genre and see what songs that you like are doing, like break down songs. So when I was first starting out making beats, a lot of the time I would remake popular beats from songs that I really liked. Like I listen to songs and be like, why is this beat so good? Like, why do I love it so much? And then I'd break it down or I'd remake it and figure out like, oh, they structured it like this, or they did this, or they use these sounds. So I would just study it and kind of deconstruct it and reverse engineer it. And then once you do that enough, you kind of learn to do it yourself and then have your own twist on it. And it becomes something original, but definitely draw inspiration from songs that you are fond of, that you love. Hopefully that answers.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jump over to Will's got a question. We'll go to Chris, and if you still have more questions, John, we can swing back to you. So, but let's go to Will's question first. Chris.
Hi, Casey. Nice to meet you. First of all, I was going to say, having someone kind of doing in the box producer stuff in Utah would be really cool to see if we ever get you in the studio. Brian could make that happen. Even though we use Pro Tools, it'd be super sick to like open up your FL projects and kind of break them down. But my more sort of personal question for you is when you mentioned signing with like Universal and your other label that you're on right now, I kind of wanted to know what are your takes on the drawbacks and the benefits of actually signing, especially with a big label like Universal, because I feel like a lot of even people just starting out as a hobby, or if you start working with bands and you're going to start doing labels like that, what's kind of the do's and don'ts? What are the things to watch out for? And what are sort of the drawbacks of being signed to a label if they're going to start wanting to like manage your actual output of songs and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question. So as a producer, I feel like as an artist, when you sign to a label, it's a little different because artists, the label is kind of stifling their creativity or deciding, not stifling, but like deciding what you get to put out or what gets greenlit or whatever. As a producer, it's a little bit different. So as producers or songwriters, we have publishing percentage of songs, and it's kind of complicated, but like if I produce a song and it comes out, I get some publishing royalties from the song getting streamed and played on the radio, whatever. I get a percentage of that as back end income off the song. And so when you get a big song, like the Falling song is what got me signed because it was a hit song. And so through that publishing, there's a lot of money coming in on the back end. So basically, when I signed to Universal, they're saying, well, we want a percentage of your publishing from that song, or all your songs rather. And in exchange, we'll give you an upfront fee or an upfront advance, and then we'll help you get more opportunities to get more songs. So that's kind of the exchange. So I'm not signing any of my like rights of beats I make to them, but the songs that I have produced that are out, I gave up a percentage of my back end royalties. That's kind of the exchange that's going on. So when you look at signing with a label like that as a producer, you kind of have to think like, is this place going to give me opportunities? Are they actually going to be able to put me in rooms with artists that I want to be with? Because that's the number one advantage I could get out of it. They're taking, like, obviously they're giving me they gave me a lump sum of money up front, which is great, but you can't just think about the money. You have to think about what opportunities am I going to get from this? Because when I was going to get signed to a deal, I had multiple labels give me offers. So I had like Sony gave me an offer. We'll give you this much up front. This is what we can do for you. And then Universal had theirs. And the important thing is not to just go for the money. And when you're a producer or you're a starving artist, whatever you are, it's easy to be like, oh man, that's a big check. I'm just going to take that. But you have to think about what opportunities are they going to be able to give you down the road, because that's what really matters. The check is fine. They take half of your publishing percentage, which is fine. But what opportunities are they going to be able to give you in the future, because you're signed to them for multiple years and you're kind of stuck with them at that point. So that's what I had to think about. And obviously Universal is a big label and they have a lot of artists that they can put me in with. But if I had to go back and do it again, I might have taken less money up front to sign with a smaller label, because they might have been able to give me more focus and put me in different situations. Because Universal, they have so many artists and producers signed where it's kind of just like, I don't know, they're not super hands-on with me. They kind of just like, they put me in opportunities occasionally, but most of it I have to go do on my own. So, or through Internet Money, which I'm just part of the collective. I'm not necessarily like signed to them like a label. That's just like the collective I'm a part of and came up with. And I get more opportunities through them than Universal, if I'm being honest. So if you ever come to that situation, just don't go for the money, go for the opportunity. Hopefully that answers.
I think that's a
Sweet, thank you.
great answer. All right, Chris, let's jump over to your question. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Cool. Yeah, I feel like I got a million questions. Other kids will probably be like, yeah, that's not surprising. But I started in hip hop. That's kind of where I got into, I will say, computer music from, like, I was a choir kid, but it was kind of always hard for me, like hip hop, getting it further than like my own computer, right? And I started like a little hip hop group doing like a lot of like atmosphere stuff, more like 90s style. And so just like having someone that's doing hip hop here with us is really cool, because sometimes I don't feel like really connected to these people. But I have like a million questions, and one we'll start with like 3 or 4, but something simpler and then go more deep. But first of all, where should I go get my samples? Where are you finding good samples these days? Because I'm sick of Splice.
When you say samples, you mean like drum samples or like melody samples?
Oh man, I mean like drum samples are like one shots are cool. I would rather record drums more often than not.
Okay.
But I mean, like I don't get the opportunity. Luckily, we are, at school we have that opportunity a little bit more. But so I guess if there's a place you like drum samples, sure. But I was thinking more like melodies, or more like vocals, and like more like creative stuff. Like I would like I've like Tracklib, have as like actual songs, like real samples, that you can split revenue stuff with them. I like that a lot. I don't use them right now, but like, where do you go? What do you use?
So I have a few different answers. So I actually started a drum kit and loop kit site called wavesupply.net. And that's like
looking it up.
yeah, that's like Internet Money's. That's our own like website that we did to compete with different sites, but it's not the same as Splice. So Splice is a little different. I do use Splice for stuff like that. There's a VST called Arcade. Have you heard of that by Output?
Mm-hmm.
They have some cool vocal stuff and some cool samples. Other than that, like I would say 80% of like the samples and loops that I get are from like peers, like people that I've met and networked with, like because there's producers that just make melody loops or samples, and that's their whole thing, and they get like placements and like platinum records off of just that. So I'm connected with a lot of those guys, and so personally they send me stuff like weekly packs and stuff like that. So that's what I use most of the time. Yeah, outside of Splice, I can't really think of many other options. Just like making your own, or like connecting with people that make them that are like really good at it. And other than that, Splice, man. To be
No, that
honest,
makes sense. No, yeah, that makes sense. I think digging through Splice instead of just going to the front page, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, Splice has a lot of
that's
stuff. There's also Loop. What's it called? Looper?
Loop Cloud?
No. What's it called? Looper, man. Looper, man.
Oh yeah, Looper Man's good.
Yeah, but I personally I don't use a lot of samples. I use like loops that people have made, melody
Interesting.
loops a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Number two question is like, so with like Trevor Daniel and like stuff like that, that's a lot more like I'm trying to find like the genre, like kind of like new wave white boy pop hip hop. It's kind of punk. It's kind of, you know, there's a lot like Post Malone does it a little bit. I don't know, like I don't know if it's got a genre name other than pop, but it's kind of like this new punk style. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, it's
Do you
like
feel like
alternative
yeah.
hip hop. Yeah.
So you talked about like doing a few different, yeah, alternative hip hop's probably perfect. I love that. Do you feel like you like are in all the genres that you want to be in, or do you feel like you kind of like your job is a genre, but like if you get really creative, you want to make, I don't know, like some house music or something. I don't know. Like for me, I love so many genres, and I guess I'm asking this because I'm scared of getting too niche into a genre where like that's what people know, and that's what like my peers are aware that I make. So I have to keep doing that to get the bag. But really, I would rather be more creative doing all sorts of things. And that's like a scare. Like, how do you balance that? Do you feel like that? Or did you like hip hop, pop music, send it? That's good.
So personally, I'm a fan of like hip hop music and modern hip hop music, so it's easy for me to make stuff like that because I actually listen to it and like it. So luckily, a lot of the stuff that I make is in that genre. But I do like to do different stuff. Like I dabbled in like EDM or like house music for a while, just for fun. I don't feel like there was a lot of money in it. Pop is definitely where the money's at, like pop songs, because when you're a producer and you put a song or a song gets released that you produced, most of the money nowadays is from radio. Unfortunately, streaming is like so nickel and dime that like a song could stream 100 million streams and it's not that much money on the back end. But if a song goes on the radio, that's where you get a lot of money. So that's why pop is the most lucrative genre, but it's also the hardest to get into because it's very gate kept. There's a lot of all like let's take Taylor Swift for example. Like she works with her producer or producer group. There's like circles in the music industry. There's like little circles that they just work with each other, and it's very hard to get into those. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I do like to make the stuff that I'm primarily getting placements in and getting songs released in, so that helps. But I like to mess around and dabble. It's a little bit of both. I feel like some days you just got to have fun and make whatever you want to make and not really care about getting it to an artist or anything like that. It is a little bit of both. So.
Yeah. One more.
Sure.
This is my last one. So you kind of started in that almost like that SoundCloud phase that like internet is kind of, I mean, and that's still like a thing, but it's kind of that first wave of like SoundCloud music and like internet producers. I feel like it's gotten so saturated that it's kind of the norm now, / it's kind of like that wild, wild west kind of feel is a little bit over. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a little bit different now. What would you say is in your opinion, from what you're seeing, what's the next wave? What's the way that new kids are coming up? / like, I feel like I'm a little bit older, like I'm married myself. And so I'm in that group that Brian was talking about. Like I'm trying to figure this out from a new perspective, but I would love some insight into like maybe something I might not know about that we should know about that maybe the big thing in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it is super oversaturated now. Like every kid with a laptop can now make music and make beats or whatever. But there's also a lot of new avenues. Like when I started, YouTube wasn't that big for music. It was like SoundClick, SoundCloud, all that stuff. People were just putting out beats on there. And now it's like YouTube is still king. And I kept predicting like what's the next thing going to be, but it's still YouTube. I feel like right now as a producer, YouTube and TikTok, to be fair, YouTube and TikTok and Instagram are like your biggest avenues. And I feel like you just have to put yourself out there and just like and it can be niche. Like there's audiences out there. Like you could be a super niche producer that makes like super specific stuff. And nowadays, like in 2023, you could put yourself out there and blow up and go viral or like have a TikTok sound go up. You know, TikTok's kind of like the new radio right now. It's kind of crazy. Like if a song blows up on TikTok, it's a #1 hit versus like no one's really listened to the radio that much anymore. So put this, I just say put yourself out there. It doesn't matter what it is you like to make, whatever you're passionate about, whatever genre you like to make, no matter how small of a niche you may think it is, make it, bro, and just put it out, and you'll be surprised like that you can, there's pockets of like audiences that you can get fans from. So just put yourself out there, man. Just make what you want to make and what you love, and people will come to it. You know what I mean? That's how I feel. So just take advantage of YouTube, TikTok, just go do your thing.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
John, you got another question. Let's go ahead and jump over to you. Go for it.
Yeah. Casey, what do you monitor on when you're making your beats?
You mean like my speakers, my monitors?
Yeah.
So I have, and I've had these for years and I love them. They're my favorite to make beats on. Yamaha HS8s. I like them because they're flat. Because when I first started, I got Rockets, the Rock KRK Rockets, and they were cool. But the problem with them is they boosted the bass. They over exaggerated the bass too much. So when I would make beats, I thought my bass was like, hitting super hard. And then I played in the car or something and it wasn't. And so I found the Yamahas probably about 6-7 years ago. I don't know how long it's been. And I've had the same pair since. I just love them because they're flat enough to, like, if the bass is hitting on them, I know that the bass is going to be hitting elsewhere. And another thing is, like, you just kind of have to train your ears to whatever you have. I don't feel like there's necessarily any best monitor. I'm sure there is. You guys are more engineer based, so you probably know more about it. But I feel like whatever you have, as long as you can train your ear to it, you can make good stuff on it. Like, I have these dialed in. I know what my mix should sound like on them because I've used them for so long. And I went through so many phases of like testing in the car. Like I would do these experiments. I'm sure everyone's done it, or like I'd export a beat, I'd take it to the car, listen to it, take notes, bring it back, fine tune it, take it back to the car. And I do that until I got it perfect in the car, because I listen to most of my music in my car. And I know that's where I like commercial releases sound good at. So I would try to make my beats sound similar in the car as commercial releases did. And by doing that, I kind of fine tune my ears to my speakers. Now I just know like what sounds right to me. So you just kind of have to train your ears. But Yamaha HS8s, I recommend them.
Awesome.
Awesome.
You got another
And then
one? We can pass it
yeah,
over. You got another one? Go for it.
another quick question. If the opportunity with internet money had not panned out for you, how do you think you would have taken your career knowing what you know now?
Dang. That's a hard question. It's a hard one to answer because it's a big what if, I don't know. Who knows where it would have gone? I probably would have, because internet money was just at the time when it started, when it founded, we were just putting beats out online, like I said, and I was probably making a couple grand a month just off of selling beats before I got with internet money. So things were starting to go. Like at the time I was like, yeah, that's amazing. Things are growing. But then with internet money, the online stuff, even within internet money, started to kind of die. Like the last question that I was asked is how, like, before you, is how it was like oversaturated and how that period is kind of gone. And like people aren't making as much money online anymore because it's so oversaturated. That was starting to happen. And luckily we transitioned to the music industry and got away from the online stuff. So I was in the right place at the right time with internet money. We started working with big artists. Like, if any of you guys are familiar with Juice Wrld, we discovered Juice Wrld, and another person who's on internet money, his name's Nick Mira. He like is one of the people that started first working with Juice Wrld, and working with him and like a few other artists we were working with at the time just made us start to skyrocket, and we shifted over to the music industry. So if I wasn't with internet money at the time, I probably wouldn't have moved to the music industry at the time. I probably still would have been trying to focus on online beats. And yeah, I don't know what would have happened. I was just at the right place at the right time, and I'm grateful for it. So I don't know why my camera turned off. Sorry.
Okay. That's why I put it on gallery view, so you just didn't see just your name.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, if you guys don't know internet money, like the second I saw your hat, Casey, like I was like, oh, is that who we were talking with? I was like, wait a second. So if you guys don't know the waves that they made that in the hip hop and the like just pop music and pop culture, that's huge. He probably won't say it like I will say it, but I'll say it. Like,
I appreciate you, man.
This is nothing small. The guy we're chatting with, it's a big deal. It's cool.
I'm the hype man.
Thank you, bro.
Hype man. All right, Will, what's your question? Go for it.
All right, one last question. This might be a little tricky to answer, so don't worry about it. But I was kind of just wondering, like you mentioned already, your decision to stay in Utah, even though you're in the music industry. I kind of wanted to know maybe just a little bit of your personal sort of insight on how you think the local scene is going to move. You already know, like Post Malone's already got a house here. He lives here a lot, so there's kind of seems like it's growing up a little bit. So there might be more opportunities in the near future. And I kind of want to know if you have some sort of strategies or places. Where do you go to meet people locally, so that if we want to make connections here in Utah, we can start with local artists that we might want to produce with or collaborate with, as the music scene is going to start growing more, hopefully, for our little state here.
Yeah, the music scene here is definitely growing and expanding, which is great. I love it. When I was first starting out selling beats online and stuff, there wasn't much of a local scene here. And so I just kind of bypassed that whole section. I didn't really try to work with local artists. I just went straight to the internet and started working on the internet. And I had a bigger picture. I was like, instead of just trying to like give beats to the local artists here, probably don't have a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. I'll just put my stuff out online. So like the whole world of artists who have, are out there. So I kind of jumped over that. But now, and I've been working with a lot of people locally now just to kind of, because I like Utah. I like the scene. I like the culture. So I've been trying to like integrate myself back in there. And there's a lot of cool artists now in all genres here. So it definitely going to blow up. But you guys are trying to be engineers, I'm assuming. Is that what you're trying to go into, is engineering?
I do like the studio engineering side of it a lot, but I also make in the box stuff, and I'm working with kind of a rock band right now, and I'd like to collaborate with other electronic people kind of in the box. So
Nice.
It's a little bit all over.
Yeah. So for example, as an engineer, what I did before, so to backtrack a little bit, before I started putting my stuff online and I just wanted to do something in music, I was just dabbling and making beats. I wanted to become an engineer because I thought, that's the only way I can make money with music. So I called a bunch of studios and tried to intern, and I got an internship at one called Audio West. That's also where Brian worked back then, and we kind of crossed paths a little bit back then. So I kind of interned there, and through that, even though I was being an engineer, I was still selling beats to the local artists at the time. Just whoever would pass through that I'd be engineering, I'd give them beats or sell beats, whatever. So I feel like once you guys are done with school or whatever you want to do, I would get an internship with a local studio, and through that you'll meet a lot of bands. You'll have clients, you'll be recording clients, and then through that you'll just meet a bunch of people, and you'll kind of start building up your network, your network of people. Every time you go to a studio session, you'll meet someone new. And that's true even for me. When I go to LA, I have a session, I'll meet someone every time I go to a studio session, and then like my network just expands, and then I have more opportunities and more people I know. So I feel like just start to grow your network of people, like go to shows in the genre that you're interested in. If you want to work with more people in rock, go to bands shows, meet people. You just got to go out there and build your network up and meet people. And yeah, working at a local scene, studio, spot, venue, something like that, you'll just meet people and cross paths, and over time you'll build that up, and that's kind of how you integrate yourself into it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you. It's awesome.
Yeah, you guys would be surprised the connections. Audio West was not a big studio. In fact, it started as a B studio at June Audio.
Yeah.
He just rented out a room from Scott at June Audio, and then he got his own space, and he's not doing Audio West anymore. He's working with a different company now, but there's a lot of ties that you guys would be very surprised from a little studio that was just down the street here from UVU, that there's a lot of us who have some very interesting connections. Joey Bradford that we talked to earlier this year was there. Kim was there. And we all have common friends that we all still communicate to a lot through that little thing. And you know, somebody comes in and out of your life, sometimes will disappear for a little bit, then all of a sudden they're back into, oh hey, what's up? And you're like, you might not have the best recollection because sometimes those studio days are hazy and you're tired, and you know, and you walk in and it's like, oh, I don't know what's going on, and you leave, but then you're like, oh yeah, we connected way before this year, through just a little studio that was down the street. So don't be afraid to take your chances on a little studio. I know that we all want to achieve the biggest, highest dreams of the best studios around, but sometimes it's the people who are willing to build up with you at the same time and put a little bit of trust in what you're doing and work as like his internet money is. That was something that he was with as it was in the grassroots, and you never know what is going to take off and build. And as you guys are students, you're in a fertile landscape to find like-minded people and do that, and start your own thing if you want to. Look at the boardwalk was started by a couple of students here, and it's a venue and studio, and now it's been sold, but you know, that was an idea of some students here at UVU. So don't discount what you guys have the power of creating. Kim has, you know, a lot of accolades behind him, and that started in him reaching out to David at Audio West and just saying, I want to learn and do this, and look at what he's got now, you know. So don't be afraid of like, well, I don't know if it's big enough for me, I don't know if it's going to do what I want. That's not what you should be focused on. You should focus on finding creative people like-minded that have a passion and a dream and want to be able to take that off. And that's how Kim got to where he's at. Kim's very successful now because he didn't give up by people saying, you know, yeah, whatever, you know. It was push through until he got to the level that he's at now. And I'm going to put some words in his mouth, but if you guys want him to come down here, I'm sure he'd be happy to come down here. You know, if you guys want to reach out to him, connect to him on Instagram, ask him questions. Don't be afraid to use resources like Kim, who can show you a pathway to what you want to find, because we are in Utah doesn't mean that there aren't people who have found that pathway to success from Utah, right? So don't be like that narrow-minded view of Utah as this tiny little place. Utah has the most interesting network of people that you'll ever meet, and we're 2 steps connected to everybody else here in Utah. So
Yeah.
don't discount your connections here. Kim, do you have any closing words before we sign out?
Yeah, just on that topic, what you're talking about real quick. Another good thing for engineers to do is to pair up with an artist. Like, find an artist that you truly believe in and you think is talented here locally, and link up with them, become their engineer, because there's 2 paths you can take in as an engineer. You can work at a studio and you just work with tons of clients and they come through and they pay you and they leave. Or you can like find someone that's actually talented and attach yourself to them and become their go-to engineer. And if that artist blows up, guess what? I mean, that happens with producers too. Like, you know, there's tons of classic pairings of producers and artists that just like were working together before, and then the artist blows up, and then next thing you know, the producer blew up, or like the engineer is now working for the artist, and guess what? Now they're getting paid a lot more for these artist sessions, and they're working with collaborators of the artist and stuff. So it's a good path to take to attach yourself to someone who's talented as an artist and just like build with them. You know, maybe you don't charge them, maybe you just believe in them so much you just believe in them and you're working with them and you're not charging them necessarily too much, or you're giving them a discount, whatever. If you believe in them, it might pay off. So that's another path you could take. That was just related to the topic. But yeah, guys, you know, the moral of the story is, even though you're in Utah, it doesn't matter. You can make something out of it. You can be anywhere in the world right now, especially 2023 with the internet, social media. You guys can do anything you want to do. And if you have a passion for something and you pursue it, the money will come eventually. You just have to keep going long enough to get there. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that picture on the internet of like a guy mining for diamonds, and he gives up when he's like one sliver away from the diamonds. That's really how it is, guys. Like, you just never know. Like, tomorrow might be the day you catch your break, or 10 years might be the day you catch your break, but just keep going and you'll never find out if you don't try. So, and yeah, I'd love to come down there anytime. I'm happy to do it. And we can, however you guys want to do it, I'm happy to do it. So
We'll figure something out and we'll get it set up, because
yeah.
We do engineer a lot, but we do have guys that are, very interested in pop and hip hop as well. And I think it's a lesser served subculture that I have plenty of connections in, that people don't get to see your lifestyle. They don't get to see the things that you're doing. And because of that, super grateful that you were willing to jump on this call with us and do this today, because, it's a different avenue that these guys might not have thought of before. And they're like, well, I'm going to be an engineer, so that's what I have to do. And that's the focus for the rest of my life. And it doesn't have to be that way. You guys have unlimited creative potential in front of you right now, and don't pigeonhole yourself just because you think one thing is the only path to success. Again,
Well,
yeah,
so
go.
I was just going to add real quick, engineering is also a great tool to have no matter what area you go into music. There's a lot of producers who were just like doing what I'm doing and learned engineering. Like, for example, let's talk about Post Malone. So his main producer is called Louis Bell. And I've met him multiple times, but basically he was just a producer. And he started working with Post Malone on his album, and he decided, I'm going to learn engineering because there's a hole there that I could fill. There's a void where Post Malone doesn't have a good engineer. I can get all his songs produced by me if I also engineer him. So he became that role for Post Malone, and now he's on every single Post Malone song that ever comes out because he's his engineer and his producer. So even if engineering isn't your end goal, it's a great skill to have just in the world of music. And you could be an engineer that sells beats. You could sell beats, and every once in a while an artist needs you to engineer. Like, you can be flexible if you have those tools. So it's very important. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's awesome. And just again, appreciative of your time, your talent, sharing with us, and your knowledge and insight. We'll cut it off because it's time, and I got another meeting that unfortunately I have to get to, because I would stay and talk to you guys all day about this kind of stuff, but time restraints keep me moving forward. And so we'll set something up with you in the future. Again, thank you for your time, and for everybody out there who's watching this on the internet beyond this class period time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for you guys who are here in class, and we will see you guys all on the flip side.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.